Really only added one new additional signee today. I'm going to talk about Malik just because the first time we got together, you guys didn't know he'd already signed, right? So the best kept secret in the Midwest. But Mac Resedish, I just can't say enough about what we learned about him. He's actually from my neck of the woods, didn't grow up too far away from where I was. And when his name came up in his hometown and his program, I kind of started smiling. And I give a lot of credit to Pat Hamilton, our personnel department, especially Pat Ryan. Pat Ryan was a huge part of Matt Bailey a year ago, just staying on top of an in-state prospect, kind of a unknown guy. We actually kind of started to talk to him. He came for a game, I guess it was probably mid-year, midway through the season. I had a chance for our guys to eyeball him and be around him. I specifically said, let's stay on the down low on this one. I really liked his film. I remember watching like the first 10 plays, and all of them were touchdowns. I'm like, how many touchdowns does this guy have? And they said 30, and I was like, really just engaged and intrigued, and that's what kind of led us to where we were this past weekend. I knew going out of the first signing day that obviously he was still a little bit under the radar from everybody else's opinion, but he's high on the radar for us. So with the bowl game and preparation and all that, I said, let's take an inventory. In January, I'd actually, felt a chance that I was going to have some transition on our staff, so I really didn't push the envelope. I just felt that I wanted to keep this one to ourselves and where we're at. So when January rolled around, I said, let's find the best weekend or best opportunity to go see him 2 weeks in a row. So I believe it was Pat Hamilton who went and saw him the first time in a basketball practice, came back, actually called me after the practice and said, Coach, what are we doing here? We need to go. And then the last Saturday that we could go out, the second to last Saturday that we could go out on the road, Coach Ryan and Coach Henry, Aaron had been out all week seeing all kinds of 24 and 25 prospects all over the country, our best defensive prospects, and I sent him in to watch Mac play basketball, and he literally came out of the gym and gave me a call and said, this is where we need to go. So I wanted to wait till the last weekend just so we could kind of put things in perspective and had him in this past weekend. And to his credit, when we offered him, he kind of took a moment, composed himself. Mom and Dad were with him, and then had a chance to go back and talk to his family and friends, who called us on Monday and said he wanted to go. I said, let's do a favor. Let's just wait till we get to Wednesday to announce this. So I have known and noticed that when we draw attention to a player, all right, we gather a lot of people around us. So I kind of wanted this one to be in our hands all the way through. So new hires, right? So I've been able to add a couple new coaches to the staff. Thad Ward, a lot of you guys already knew Thad from his prior experience of being here. I actually knew Thad before I ever came here through just the coaching profession. And then a lot of guys on our staff talked to me about who he was, what he represented, why he's here. Intrigued me at the time, but obviously I filled my staff up. So to get Thad here back with us has been absolutely awesome, just overly impressive the last 2 days, who he is, what he is. During the interview process, myself, Coach Lonnie, Coach McDonald, just very, very excited to add him in the running back room. And then obviously Charlie Bullen, a guy that several of my guys on staff knew. I'd known Charlie a little bit through the profession. I'd been down to visit with the Dolphins when he was there. Jay Kaiser was with him at Miami. Obviously, a couple of players that I coached at Arizona, I reached out to when this opportunity came for an outside line. Literally the day that I sat down with their outside linebackers when there was transition, I told them I wanted to bring someone in with pass rush value. I really think our guys are some guys that could potentially make a big jump in that area, and I told them I intended to bring someone with great pass rush value and someone that could help their skill set grow. Obviously, when you lose good coaches, to replace them with even better coaches is a goal, and I'm excited because I think Charlie brings some things that nobody else in this room has had. He's worked with some of the most elite pass rushers in the NFL. Two of those guys I talked to verbatim said, obviously very incredible coach, but an incredible motivator, great teacher in the classroom. So really excited to add them, and then also Kevin Richardson, who was with me previously as a graduate assistant, went away and was a DB coach out in New York and Long Island. I actually talked to him to coming back, and he is going to join us as an analyst. Gave him a little pay bump, brought him back, and he's now in the mix with us here as a analyst as well. So I got one more transition that I'm going to talk about that unfortunately last year when I gave you guys news about Ben Miller, Ben was in a situation that really didn't know where it was going to go. Things have been positive since then, but I'm going to officially transition. Ben, working with our administration, is going to transition to a off-the-field position. I'm going to bring in one more coach in the staff. But to kind of answer those questions, I'm going to let Ben come up here. And you guys are always asking questions, so I just said, would you be willing to come up and say a few words? So I want to bring up Ben Miller and let him kind of talk about his scenario as it is.
My wife had me make notes here, so I don't forget anything. But good to see you guys. You've been through a lot this year, right? It's been a lot. Just thankful for Coach B. You guys see just how incredible he is. His leadership and really wisdom for me. It's a different kind of journey, right, that I've been on instead of football. But he's been absolutely incredible to me and him and really my family, my wife, my kids. They're incredibly strong. And what we've gone through and all that's only made us stronger and really good. We got a great staff here. I mean, everybody here has been super supportive of me and what I've had to go through. Especially a guy like Jason Epperson. You guys behind the scenes, you guys don't even know how incredible he is. Josh Whitman and Roger Denny, those guys have worked hand in hand. Their leadership's been incredible for me, and this community is awesome. I mean, just everybody has been great, especially for me, but for my family too, because this has been really difficult. You guys didn't know we didn't plan it this way, but a year ago today was actually when I was diagnosed, and we didn't do this on purpose. It just happened to be that way. But I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. It's been a challenge. I've really been able to focus on getting healthy, getting to a point where I can hopefully get back and do this. But my biggest focus was just being able to get healthy and focus and help this team and really not be a distraction. I've seen Jeremy a couple times like look at me and I'm just like, just trying not to. I didn't want anything to come in the way of what we're trying to do here with this football program. Right now, I'm kind of living by like a 3-month rule. Every 3 months, I get scans, I get blood tests, I get all that. So right now, I just had one last week. Everything was as good as it can be. I'll get my next one in April and kind of living that way with that. Just got done with treatments about 12 days ago was my last one. So hopefully, I'll be done with that till at least April, and then we'll see what rolls from there. But we don't know what the future holds for me, so that's kind of why this is happening. But I've got a great care team. The goal in this is to cure it, so it's not something that's like we're just, hold on, our goal here is to cure this thing. So I'll continue doing this season what I did last season for Coach B, hopefully a little bit more in depth, a lot more in depth. Whatever he needs, I'll be here. I'm excited. It was really cool to learn from a head coach's perspective, what he does on a day-to-day basis and what he needs. And as you know, you see him talk football, it's from a different lens than even I look at or any of our coaches look at. So really excited about that. Coach B has been incredible to me, and I really he's helped me a lot get through this and make this. I'm excited for a new guy to come in. I don't know who it's going to be. I'm going to help him. That's one thing I wanted to know, you guys to know and everybody to know. Like, I'm excited for this. I'm excited to transition. It's the best thing for my health. I'm excited to help the new guy come in. We'll do that in whatever way possible we can do to keep helping us compete in the Big Ten here. And this really, like I said it earlier, but like this staff, the university, the community, like this, it's a really special place. My family, we're really lucky to be a part of it. So we're really looking forward to this year, what it brings. Hopefully a year from now, we're having this conversation again and maybe getting into something else. But for now, this is what it will be, and I'm excited for it with that. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those. I feel great. I really do. Just trying to get healthy, just a lot of different things with diet, with lifestyle. A coach's life is not a really good avenue for a cancer patient. It's very stressful, a lot of work hours and all that. So it's been good to really step back, to see things from a different perspective. But I feel really good right now and really hopeful for the future.
What is that perspective giving you about the job you've had, football program, just what you've been doing for all your life?
Yeah, it's hard to bring me down. And that level, what I learned about myself as a coach is like I'm pretty hard on myself. I take everything to heart. If Coach B is in a staff meeting talking to, a GA, like I take it personally, like that's something I got to work on. So that's something for me, just trying not to be stressed. It's easy to say, but it does take some perspective, and this has definitely given me some of that perspective to live, a little bit healthier life. Honestly, from that perspective, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
All good. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ben. Obviously, one of the things that I pride in our program is let everybody speak for themselves, right? So when I offered that opportunity for Ben, I thought he could speak a lot better than what I could, right? And to kind of echo his thoughts, like I can't say how much I appreciate Josh and administration all the way up to the chancellor letting us have these opportunities. I haven't really talked about it, but last year he kind of became head coach analyst, right? So I used him in every capacity that I could. He's super intelligent. Obviously, he's been a running back. He's played tight end in the NFL, played tackle in the NFL, tight ends, played running back, coached running backs, and just it's been awesome for me to learn from him as well. So really couldn't be more excited about where we're at. The thing I told him, right, is like the only alarm that should wake you is in your head, right? Like you should never set an alarm. I don't want you here. I'm trying to get him to do as much as he can to recover. So with that being said, obviously I have one more position to fill. I've engaged in some conversations. It's kind of been on the down low, so today it's obviously going to get exposed. But just he had a conversation with our specialists and tight ends earlier to have our chance to move forward. But he's going to stay with us in every capacity. So with that, I know we want to catch Malik's debut when he comes on, so I'll answer questions up till we got to go, Brett, and then just interrupt me, and we won't miss that. And I'll answer as many as we have to afterwards as well. Yeah.
Looking for specifically a tight ends coach, or do you want the same delegation of duties towards tight ends and special teams?
Yeah. So right now it'd be a tight end special teams coach, which I've focused in on a group of coaches that fit that mold. When originally when I lost a running back coach and outside linebacker coach, I knew that opened up some avenues for me. But when I began to focus in on Charlie, I knew he was going to be able to do that. Thad has actually coached special teams in the past as well, but it kind of just zeroed back to, and which is when I originally took this job, I had a group of about 5 or 6 coaches that are still on my list, right? That these guys didn't appear out of nowhere. Like I'm sure a lot of you didn't have Charlie Bowen on your radar for me to hire, right? But like he's a guy that was on my list, right? And everything that goes forward. So one of the things I pride myself on as a coach is every position that we have and an opportunity to, if you're a good football team, right, you usually lose coaches because they're good coaches, right? I found it interesting, right, within, I think, the last year or two in the Big Ten. I don't know how long it's been since another Big Ten coach was hired off of staff that didn't win a championship, right? Like we were an 8-5 football team that had our D coordinator taken away, right? So it speaks volumes about this program and what we've been able to establish, and that's why coaches want to flock to here.
You talked a lot about wanting a pass rush
Yeah.
improvement. What in Charlie's skill set do you think can get the most out of the talent you have?
Well, first, it's kind of ironic, right? So I knew of Charlie. Jay Kaiser had worked with him, so Jay had brought him to my attention even when I was down there visiting. Hey, there's an Iowa guy here, da-da-da-da. But then Coach Jameson, who was down at FAU, went down and watched Miami work out, and he's like, hey, I met this guy. He was incredible on the field with our guys, and then a year later he saw him do a clinic, and he took the leadership role there. It was interesting as I decided to go down that path, and I reached out to him when he's at Arizona. They had transition, so I reached out to people in that organization, players I'd been around. Colt McCoy, right, a Texas quarterback, right, of all things. When he found out Charlie was coming here, sent me a text and talked about how much he respected him as a quarterback in the Cardinal system, right? That's when you get excited. Marcus Golden, who's a phenomenal pass rush guy, and I coached him at New York. Charlie coached him a lot better in Arizona, and he got 12 sacks. He couldn't get any from me, right? So, like, it was just another great example of you try to hire people better than what you are. And I think now the pass rush game in the college versus the NFL is a little bit different, but I think when you bring in Coach Jameson, a lot has been said. I haven't released it publicly, but Aaron Henry will be our defense coordinator. I'm also naming Terrence Jameson our co-coordinator on defense. He'll be a lot involved with the rush game and up front and all that goes into it. Coach Boo as well. So I think the combination of those guys up front, as well as myself, is going to be able to put together a good plan.
These skilled players incoming as freshmen, like what we see here, what's the process, or how do you think about getting them onto the field? Is it something you set a goal out to do right away, or do you know, oh, okay, so-and-so might need a year of development?
Great question. I think each player is an individual plan, right? Like, I don't think you can cookie cut anybody into it. Last year, Hank Beatty, I knew bringing a skill set, right? And I knew what we want to do or how we want to do it, but he opened my eyes as a punt returner, right? Like, there was just different things you explore. I've seen Malik play live on 2 different occasions, but, you know, I don't think I'm going to know as much about him as I do until he finally gets here. And you're certainly excited about where he is. I'm not going to slot him into a thing. I don't try to build preseason hype on anybody. I just want them to come here and do what they do. I would say overall, not just skill. We had our first AM workouts today, right? And there's some guys that have been in our program now 2-3 years, right? That especially guys that have been in here 3 years pre me, right? That if you haven't gotten on the field, I wanted to get their attention today, right? And we had our first AM workout together as a team, and it was by far light years ahead of anything we've ever done before. We jumped out. My first year here, our first workout was a 3.5-minute session, 5-minute sessions with a 2-minute break. Today we jumped into a 5-minute session, 1 period, and we had everybody handle it about as good as you can handle it. Some of the newcomers were a little bit ragtag, but we've almost, you know, doubled the volume and the intensity. And I think a lot of that was bowl practice. We were able to practice all the way till January 3rd. They went home for about a 2-week window, came back and jumped into it. That's what good teams do. Now you're on a pattern of continued success. So they jump into an 8-week program. We have a couple of freshmen today that I've been hearing a little grumbling since I got back in town. Guys working out with them at the wide receiver room, at the DB room, quarterbacks throwing to them. They're like, this guy can go, right? And I mean, it just makes their attention and their radar pick up pretty quickly.
Coach, I know you know the history of this place pretty well. A couple of freshmen and receivers that were really great from the get-go with Brandon Lloyd, and it really has been, could Malik be one of those guys?
I appreciate the question, and again, I'm just going to say that every player is kind of treated the same coming in, right? Like, he's got a lot of obviously accolades. The thing I love about Malik, and I know he would appreciate that question, right? But one of the most humble, grounded, loves to compete. Like, one of the things that talking to their coaches the first time I went in there is how much he loved to compete, right? And that was definitely apparent when you started to begin to recruit him. The ground level base that I'm talking about, just how grounded he is. His mom and dad are incredibly great people that have raised a kid that is very thankful for the opportunities. He's always talking about giving back to his family, his community. You go into his home on that Sunday when he finally made it official and told me he was coming. His youth coach was there, right? His whole family and his youth coach, right? Just when you have something like that, that speaks volumes about who he is.
2 quarterbacks you got out of the portal. What excited you about Luke Altmaier, and then the opportunity to bring in a guy like John as a veteran, previous starter?
Well, I think both of them, in case they both have played college football, right? So obviously Luke at Ole Miss and John and Mac, and when I popped on the film, you could see the ball come out of their hands, right? So if you're going to sign a quarterback, you better be able to throw, right? And they've checked the box there, right? So I'm the worst evaluator at that. It seemed like every quarterback I ever liked, they didn't like, and every quarterback coach liked, I didn't like, except for Russell Wilson. That one's pretty unanimous. But I think about it last year when I saw Tommy. I saw the ball come out of Tommy's hands, and I'm like, okay, I checked the box there, right? Here we go. And then you got around him, right? And it was a little bit different process, but the first person, I only knew one person at Ole Miss, right? Well, I know Lane, but I didn't want to call Lane, but because he actually, something unique to Luke, he played in the bowl game, right? Like, he was in the portal and played because he didn't want to let his teammates down. Didn't have to do anything with him. Like, he could have easily walked out, right? He wanted to play for his teammates because he was one play away from being in the game, which happened the year before, right? And I remember when him and his parents came here and said they wanted to come, they're like, hey, he still wants to play in a bowl game. I'm like, go play. I'm not going to deter that, right? Like, I'd love to see you in there. I don't want to wish ill will on somebody else, but if you get in, it means somebody else got hurt probably, right? And it just speaks volumes about Luke. But I remembered I called a contact who's in a support staff role, and I said, hey, tell me a little bit about Luke Altmaier. And he started laughing, and I'm like, what? He goes, he was the captain, or he was the coach of my son's Little League youth baseball team, right? And I know his son. Like, I've been around him. It's a guy that I've worked with in the past. And he said he single-handedly might be the greatest kid on our football team, right? And that just said volumes to me. John Paddock is obviously the grandson of John Wright. So, he's not here because of that, but usually, I believe DNA is strong, right? Like, I see things in my 2 daughters that I know I had a hand in. So I think that DNA is big, and John's family, the success they've had here, the immediate feeling you get when you talk to him, he's got great leadership skills and talent. And then obviously our freshman too, Cal is been a guy that's jumped out from day one. Every time I called one of the wide receivers, I called Casey Washington on a blind random Wednesday. I was like, what do you think? He's like, Coach, I'm at lunch with him right now at Chick-fil-A, right? Like, I mean, he's automatically building those relationships and moving forward, so it's fun to watch.
When Sean took over special teams last fall, was that always just going to be a one-season deal, or how did that?
Great question. So, as you follow college football, there's been some talk about analysts being promoted to full-time or being able to be on the field. That was being proposed a year ago when this first came up with Ben. So I originally had hired him and Mess, and I was going to hopefully kind of job share the tight ends and special teams role. But then when that got denied by the NCAA, I knew I needed to have an on-the-field special teams coach. That's why I called Sean, hired him, and Sean was an incredible asset to our football team. The way our kickers and punters performed, but also how they grew. He ran all 4 phases of our kicking game. We added some wrinkles with things I've done and what I believed in, but he's been absolutely awesome. So a byproduct of this, I need a tight end special teams combo. So Sean and Mess aren't with us at this point right now, but that's kind of how that evolved. That's why it kind of took place late. They kept telling us it was going to pass, and it kept getting postponed. And then ironically this year, I got a text saying that they had passed that same rule, which is going to kind of change the way I thought, but now it's been rescinded, so we don't know if we're going to have that rule take place, which is why I believe you got to have someone on the field that can coach the specialists. There's some programs that do it from an analyst position, which I don't know how they do it, but some people do it that way. So like I do know I want someone in this position that can work with our guys on the field legally. Do you want to go ahead and show that real quick? I can come back and answer some questions. Just want to take 5 minutes. Or? Okay. You guys know all the other ones. I thought it was interesting today, all right, when we hit Mac, that's the 20th Illinois high school player in 2 classes that we put together. I know it's something I said literally the first day I took the job, made phone calls. Kent Brown's back there. I was in a hotel room in New Jersey when we signed a dotted line and started calling Illinois high school coaches. And so literally from the minutes on the job to where we are today, that's the 20th Illinois high school player that we've signed. And it's not just because we're signing to be from Illinois. We think they can help us win championships. This morning, to watch some of our guys, to see Jordan Anderson out there, to see Malachi, to see Aiden Lawfrey, Ian Pugh, a number of guys. I'm telling you, 2 guys were impressive today. Brendan Henderson was probably one of the more impressive guys out there today. Up until the last 5 minutes, he struggled a little bit. The big bear jumped on his back. But just really impressive to see these guys come through and build up. So I'll answer just a couple more questions if you guys have any. If not, I'll let you go. Yep.
With that, what stood out about, obviously Nate and Pat knew him. What
Yeah.
stood out about their message about him to you to move forward with that?
Yeah, so Nate and Pat, obviously, Pat especially, because when I first got here, Nate wasn't here, so Pat gave me his name when I was building my first staff. Obviously, as I did my research, it was apparent. I kind of I'd heard what I'd been told about the effect that he had in the Kansas State coaching room, right, in the coaching staff. In particular, obviously, he was coaching wide receivers, but when it came through a common acquaintance that made reference that coaching staff had made a comment to them about how much that had affected their program in the last year, that really got my attention. And then when I sat down and visited with him, we actually met on the road in St. Louis, and I tend to grab, when I interview coaches, I usually have a combination of when it's just me and the offensive staff, could be me and the entire staff. But when I'm in the room, things change a little bit, right? And so I try to grab guys individually. My first meeting with that, his attention to detail, his plan. I always ask coaches what got him into coaching. And one of the things, just to break the ice, if I don't know him, I said, why'd you get into coaching, right? And Thad shared the story that obviously was a football player growing up, went and played at UCF, and then came back and he was working in youth, right? He wanted to work with the youth in the community in the area that he grew up in, not as a football coach, he wanted to work with youth. So he was in an environment working with youth, and he shared a story that one of his supervisors, someone that was in charge of him, said he was trying to find activities to do, said, hey, didn't you play football? Why don't you teach these guys football, right? And he started teaching the group that he was in how to play football, and all of a sudden he had an organized team that was pretty good, and that's when the idea of coaching popped in his head. So it wasn't like he gravitated to coaching to coach. He gravitated to working with youth, which I think speaks volumes of who he is and what he stands for.
Real
quick, if I could. This day doesn't have the same kind of draw as December. Where do you want to see the signing days go in the future? Do you like 2 signing periods? Would you rather just have one?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
We actually did a survey today. I sat down with a couple of my coaches, the head coaches. We got a recruiting survey. The NCAA wanted. They're asking us for all kinds of advice right now, right, about everything. And 2 things that I think that need to be addressed. As you guys follow us, you know that really by the end of June, we usually have a pretty good contingent of who we're going to sign, right? It may not be, somewhere, I would say somewhere to 80 to 90% is what I would expect to be the norm. We're always going to add a couple extra, but we're very diligent in our evaluations where we are. We don't really lose a lot of players. We've lost a player or 2 maybe the last 2 years, maybe by our choice, might be by their choice. But one of the things that's been evident is this new rule to have 85 scholarships available at any time has really kind of opened the door to basically sign a player earlier than ever before. So we'd actually talked together earlier, the staff, we put forth a proposal that would allow us to sign prospects in July because really August is a dead period. You can't really do much with them as it stands. So by the end of July, kind of the kids that know where they want to go. Caden Fagan, from the time he committed to the time we are today, he wanted to come here, right? I was worried to death in this world that we're in with NILs and everything else, but I knew the type of person I was dealing with, so I was never, but there are guys that I worry about that with, right? So I think to move the signing date, but I would also reserve the right, I would like to have all 3. I would like to have the July, I'd like to have December, because I think December is more of a natural time for everybody, because in July, like I'm pretty steady right where I'm at right now in our career, and obviously just signed a contract that takes care of that conversation for a long time, but not just head coaches, but a lot of times assistant coaches transition, right? So we learned that this year more than anybody, right? Like, so I think to have a December signing period after the wave of the end of the season where you know who the staff is and what they are, right? That'll make sense. And then this January one, obviously February, for Mac, right? Like Mac and Matt Bailey the last 2 years, right? Like just very excited what they bring to the table and where it's at. I think it is heavily affected. One of the things the portal world I think we wish we could have is the ability to instantly sign a portal player. They have no signing date, literally. So the reason I couldn't talk about, right, but Bret brought to my attention, I know you guys had a chance to interview him, right? I haven't been able to talk. You obviously asked me about the quarterbacks, but Altmaier, our tight end, Arkin, Harper, McClure, Paddock, and then we also added a guy by the name of Denzel Daxon the last week or 2. I couldn't talk about them because they've never signed anything. And even though they told me they were coming, they may release it, but I can never physically say something about them because I'd be commenting on a prospect that isn't engaged with us legally, right? So obviously I made reference to a player that committed to us in December, right? But I couldn't get him on campus before someone else was able to get him out from underneath us. So like it would avoid situations like that. And I think it's one of those things that the world of college football is evolving through the signing day, NIL, the portal world, and all that goes into it.
Intentionally small was the recruiting circle around Mac, even in your staff and in this building. Did you not want everybody involved in the sense that we could lose him?
Yeah, even within our building. Yeah, I think a year ago I learned something when I offered a kid who had no offers, sat on my couch, and 14 days later he had over 30 offers, right? I know what we can do, right? But we just for the first time went 8-5. Like I'm not very excited about it, right? Like I'm excited because we went to a bowl game and what we're able to do, but that's not where I want to be, right? Like, but people are paying attention to what we're doing, right? And the thing that upsets me, listen, I'm the biggest NIL fan there is, right? But I think the part that really jumps out is, like, I pride the way that we work, the way that we do our business. For your point, like whether it's keeping the circle small or making the circle big, to talk to Malik Elzy every day, that didn't happen by chance, right? That was a direction. I knew when I was talking, I knew when Gio was talking, I knew when J-Mo was talking, I knew when the staff were talking, the graphics, the direction of Pat Embleton. What I get upset about is, right, the NIL world is incredible. We got a couple really good players that could have left us for the NFL, and the big part of why they're staying is they want to take their draft status from maybe being a fourth-round pick to a second or first-round pick, and the money you can make there. But also, the NIL world allows us to do some things for them that's never been done before. So it's a great event. It's incredibly. I couldn't be a bigger NIL fan. What I hate about NIL is before a player gets somewhere and he's getting money that has never been earned, right? Like I get it once you're here and you're doing things, you get it, but. And then, to have people think that's great recruiting more than just they got a bigger check to write, right? That's the part that gets frustrating And I think that's the part the NCAA is trying to get a hold of.
More about Matt. I mean, it's an exciting time for kids to get offers and have that opportunity. How did you get the buy-in from him to keep that under the radar?
Well, it was a limited window. All right, he didn't know coming down here. We had a couple players, and I can't talk about some of these guys because of NCAA rules. So we had 8 guys that we've offered opportunities to walk onto come down this past weekend. He being one of them, and then I pulled him aside when him and his mom and dad got here, sat him down in my office, showed them the history of walk-ons, me being one of them, that I thought he could, share that story. But I also then threw on a twist, like, I also, by the way, I want to give you a scholarship, right? And once I knew that he kind of wanted to take a deep breath, go back and talk to people, when he committed on Monday, I told Aaron, let's just keep this under wraps till Wednesday and go. And I think it speaks volumes about who he is and what he is. Really excited about Mac. Yeah,
The guys
that's Mandy Warner right here.
The guys you have back, Johnny, Keith, Isaiah. I mean, how much does that tell you about one, as you mentioned, your competitiveness in certain NIL fields, but also your ability? They're trusting you guys to elevate that draft stock. What's it do for you as a player?
Yeah, so one of the things that was awesome at the end of this year, as we got better and better, I began to see guys play at a level that I'm like, oh, I'm not naive to the fact how good they're playing, right? And one guy in particular was Spoon, right? Like I really think about midway through the season. Actually, I take that back. In fall camp, I took a day to sit him, right? Because he pushed Isaiah near the boundary, right? And obviously I wanted to protect our players, but I grabbed him and he was a little pissy with me for about 48 hours. I'd walk by in the hallway, I go, you talking to me yet? And he's like, no. I'm like, all right. So we would go, and then I after things calmed down, I said, listen, the reason I'm telling you that is when you go to play at the next level, if you do something like that, that can turn a whole locker room against you, right? Because in the NFL, right, everybody respects the way you play. And Spoon, from that day forward, bought into everything that we did, right? Coaching, emphasis, and I began to realize, like, this cat is going to play himself into the top round, right? It could be a first, second round pick, and that's kept escalating. When the end of the year came, I didn't even talk about trying to retain him. I said, hey, what can we do to make this great, right? And that's when I came up with having a press conference. We're having all these guys say, hey, peace out, I'm declaring. He's an NFL first-round draft pick. He should just go get ready, right? So that was a little bit different than, the other guys we had conversations with. And as we began to manifest this thing through, the guys that had choices, Johnny, Keith, Isaiah Adams, Julian Pearl, Isaiah Williams, Tariq Barnes, like some of these guys, Seth Coleman, like these guys, I said to our coaches, listen, we obviously have a certain pool of collective money that I'm not involved in, but I knew that was going to be there. But they're not going to stay with people they don't trust. They're not going to stay and maybe forego options that people were talking to them about. We had people that reached out to our players, right, that we're going to give them just what it is, right? Like, that's what it is, right? And for them to stay here and stay with us, it's because they respect us, right? And it's not even a like thing or a love thing. I think there is that, but like they respect what we've done for them. They respect how we coach them, and they know that the reason they've developed is because of what we've done. And there's a mutual respect. Like I've learned so much from this group of players about coaching, management, how to think, how to walk, how to talk, and the growth that we had. And we're an 8-5 football team that, lost 5 games with a score in between us. And I think they're excited about what that possibly can do, because good players make good football teams, but the combination of them both make something great for the next level.
Can I ask you about
Yeah.
the rise of Spoon on these draft boards? You got I think a trio of guys in Mobile that people are learning about this week, and they're going to explode. As a coach, how cool is that to see guys that you've already known for several years just get on that stage and get known? Just the growth, man. Like from when we first saw those guys to where we are, I think as coaches, you truly get in it to develop, right, and watch growth. And then the character, the personality, between in Mobile is Chase, Sid, and Quan. Obviously, Spoon bailed out, but the 4 guys there, just their growth as professional football players and to know what they're capable of doing. I think it's a rise from the outside world looking in, but I think myself and Aaron Henry, about midway through the year when he started to make some of those plays, were like, this is like uncharted, right? His burst, his athleticism, his awareness, his intelligence, his competitiveness. And then, a guy like Tommy DeVito, I saw somebody put out an article yesterday that might be the best quarterback shining through practices out there at the Shrine Game. What's cool for me, like, Sid, Quan, and Chase's head coach is Pat Graham, who I worked with at the Giants, right? And DeMarcus Covington is a defensive coordinator for the other side, who I worked with in New England. I got coaches out in
in Vegas with the Shrine game that I know and I've worked with, right? And to have all these dots connect around our players and they get information, they know how we train people, which I think enhances their value even more, right? So, yeah, Spoon may be a rise from the outside world. I think from the inside world here, and even you guys probably could see it. Like, you know, he's a very special player and a very special competitor.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.